Hello, everyone. I'm William Maker, Solutions Architect at Pinnacle Business Systems, and welcome to today's panel on all things Red Hat. I'd like to give a special thanks to the Pinnacle marketing team, as well as both the Ingram Micro and Red Hat teams for helping us organize and provide resources for the event today. I hope everyone who registered early has received their selected gift box, and for those of you who registered a little later, you can still expect to receive yours. I'll be moderating today's discussion, and I've come prepared with a list of questions to help get things kicked off. Today, we will be focusing on recent announcements from April's Red Hat Summit event, as well as 3 questions and answers sections on topics including Red Hat Enterprise Linux, Ansible Automation Platform, and OpenShift. You'll see a chat box and a questions and answer box on the right side of the BlueJeans interface we're using today. So feel free to participate in the chat and ask questions in either the chat or the Q&A sections of the interface, and we'll address those questions with today's panel as they come up. And with that, I'll turn it over to David Marks to introduce our Red Hat panel.
Okay. I am David Marks. I'm a Senior Solution Architect. I'm in the partner channel. And actually, I brought 3 colleagues with me that are experts in their area. And I'm going to turn it over to Dan to introduce himself.
Thanks, David. Dan Lineback here. I'm your Senior Solution Architect, and I'll be focusing on the RHEL. And I will be kicking this over to Peter so that he can introduce himself.
Thanks, Jim. My name's Peter Jervis. I'm an SA supporting all things on the platform, but my specialties are Ansible. Get over to Giri.
Hi, my name is Giri Venkatraman. I'm a solutions architect with the partner development team here at Red Hat and focused on cloud native development.
Excellent. Back to you.
Great. Yeah, thanks for joining us today. So I wanted to break today's discussion up into 4 different categories. I wanted to talk, briefly about some of the announcements that took place in late April when you guys finished up your Red Hat Summit annual conference. So could we first kind of go over what the main focuses were for Red Hat Summit this year in April?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the main topics was talking about how we're enhancing our hybrid cloud support by increasing the support for edge computing. Now, Red Hat and our products are already, we already have this concept of compute anywhere, regardless of whether you're on premises or whether you're in the cloud, it's all the same. But we're extending these capabilities out into the edge outside of the data center. In addition to that, we talked about expanding the OpenShift offering. We have a new offering called OpenShift Plus, which includes our acquisition of StackRox, which provides container security. So it actually evaluates what's in the container and tells you if anything's out of compliance within a container. Beyond that, we expanded OpenShift Dedicated, what we offer there in every one of the cloud providers, and we added along with that some cloud services, and the cloud services around API management, Kafka streaming, and also a data science service, which is currently in beta. We went over a whole bunch of enhancements to Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And then also, too, we talked about Insights, Red Hat Insights. Typically, Red Hat Insights in the past has only been around evaluating your RHEL implementation, and we've expanded that. We've kind of rewritten the whole thing and expanded it to actually include Insights for OpenShift and also Insights for Ansible. So those are the highlights.
Appreciate it. It sounded like you had mentioned edge computing, StackRox, OpenShift Dedicated, as well as RHEL, the enhancements in the new version of 8.4. I'd like to cover all that stuff in detail, when we get into each one of those sections. But at a more overarching view, I saw in the keynote discussion that there was a slide that came up that kind of said every company is a software company. What does that mean to Red Hat? Is that kind of that digital transformation type messaging that we're hearing kind of across the industry?
That's exactly what it is. Actually, I think who coined the phrase was the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella. And, he basically said that every company is a software company. You have to start thinking and operating as a digital company. And right now, competition is so high, so tight, you have to use the data that you're currently gathering. You got to be able to use it in order to engage your customers differently, engage your suppliers differently for that competitive edge. And that's really what digital transformation is all about, is really a different way of doing business by leveraging the data assets that you currently have. And so that drives you to being more of a software company just right away.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense because we're seeing either be disrupted or you're going to be disrupted, or you need to be the disruptor in your own industry. So if you're a legacy business, you have to pivot and change to be more modern. And so with that, management organizations are probably putting a lot of pressure on CIOs to modernize, and thus the CIO is then driving down that to the operations team. So as it relates to cloud and organizations engaging with private and public clouds, how does Red Hat see, the pressure on the CIO and then driving that down to the operations teams?
Yeah, it's a great question. The CIO has always been about managing costs and also to supplying the IT infrastructure or IT capabilities needed for the business. And the public cloud provides just an enormous leap forward in flexibility to meet the business unit's needs. But also, too, that's at a cost. And so it's really a balancing act. And so what we're seeing is we're seeing that throughout the marketplace, companies embracing the hybrid cloud architecture. And so not everything is going to the public cloud. Typically, there's always some in the data center as well. And so they're doubling down on this hybrid cloud architecture. And that's what, here at Red Hat, we understand that, and that's what we're all about, is to make that as seamless as possible.
Yeah, I think that kind of leads me into my follow-up question, which was, centered around, how does Red Hat software and the things that we're going to cover today help companies achieve kind of that digital transformation message? There's a lot of software manufacturers out there today that are speaking kind of this same message. What differentiates Red Hat, and how does your software portfolio help, the customers that are on today's attendee list achieve that narrative?
Yeah, it's really multifaceted. That's a great question. We're breaking down the barriers with our products. Both RHEL and OpenShift they're being enhanced to support computing at the edge. Also, too, products like OpenShift, it abstracts the infrastructure layer. So it doesn't matter where you're doing your work, whether it's in the public cloud or on premises. It's you're provided with the same environment, same tool set. And then also, too, our products help manage IT complexity. You and I know, 10 years ago, things were much simpler. IT has become way more complex, and along with it, it's way more robust, right? And but there's need to actually manage that complexity, and so our tools help manage that. It's like Ansible, Insights, RHEL, even OpenShift help manage that overall IT complexity, for the enterprise.
Yeah, thanks, David. Dan, you said you were going to help us out with kind of covering what's new with Red Hat Enterprise Linux. I know that Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8.4 was recently released. What changes can customers expect? Let's say you're running Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 today, or you're running an earlier version of 8. What features and functionality are new in 8.4, and how do I migrate my existing RHEL 7 to move up to like a RHEL 8?
Yeah, great question. So what we provide is the Red Hat, it's called the Leap tool, and the Leap tool really helps you upgrade from RHEL 7 to RHEL 8, and it really makes that seamless. So that's the first part. And additionally, for those people that are running, say, maybe you're running CentOS, or maybe you're running even Oracle Linux, our Convert to RHEL tool will actually convert and migrate that OS over into a RHEL 8 instance. So once it's over and it's up and running, typically you'll have on the distros, the say CentOS, or say something like Oracle Linux, there's one reboot involved, and then you're up and you're using our repos and running against the RHEL repos. So that's a really great, easy tool to use. I've done probably about 5 or 6 of those and just tested it out across a variety of different environments. And it's typically about a 30-minute upgrade for most machines. And, just do all the same things you regularly would do with any machine. Back it up before you do it, and then go on and take care of the convert to RHEL. It's pretty simple and straightforward. I'm happy to give a demo or show somebody how to do that if they need any time on that after this. We can set that up.
Yeah, sure. I was reading a little bit about some of the features and functionalities that seem to be like newer to RHEL 8, and some of the topics that came up were like the RHEL container tool. Containers, it seems to be still pretty new to my territory. There's not a lot of people at the organizations I'm with right now that have these huge development staffs where they're trying to manage Kubernetes, environments and deploy containers into platforms. As we start to see this transition from more legacy applications over to like more modernized apps that run in containers, what is the RHEL container tool? How does it affect operations teams, and how do developers leverage it?
Okay, so first of all, included in every distribution of RHEL 8, we're going to include now the updated container tools. We have Podman, we have Scopio, we have Builda, and those are part of the RHEL Extras repos. But also, the great thing about that is that as you're developing those skill sets and you're trying to move into containers and trying to build that as kind of a platform, what David referred to, our OpenShift platform, you can go ahead and deploy these OCI compliant images. And you can use things like our source to image, which are free. We have other tools that can help you as you're developing those skill sets. So we have the developer subscription program where you can have 16 free instances of RHEL. So that's a great way to get up and running. Maybe your company is not actually giving you access to the RHEL instances. So it gives you the ability to create a container-centric model using a platform like OpenShift, but using RHEL as the baseline to develop those skills. Additionally, operations likes that, because if you're developing those containers using those OCI compliant images, you're going to be able to take those and port those over into something like an OpenShift platform. So the reality is it really helps you as a developer develop those skill sets and use those tools locally, and then take those and move those into something like a platform like OpenShift, or even some of the other cloud providers that we support with the XKS, things like Azure Kubernetes, or say the AWS, so Elastic Kubernetes service, et cetera. So, okay. And then finally, it really gives you the opportunity to do those, to build around those automation workloads that you're going to use with some of our other management tools.
Okay, I gotcha. So it's kind of providing like the building blocks that I'm going to need early on to start diving a little bit deeper into containerization. And then eventually I can take those new skills that I've learned and then pivot towards like using OpenShift to like fully deploy and manage, a multi-cloud, more complex containerized app.
That's exactly right.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Some of the other notes that I had in here about new things that were new for RHEL 8.4, performance Copilot, web console, system roles. What impact do those tools have on my day-to-day? If I'm a Linux systems administrator and I've got a set of servers, how is that going to make a difference in my environment?
Yeah, so let's kind of start back at, let's just say you're a Windows admin. Because the Linux admins are already going to have some level of competence. But if you're a Windows admin and you've been looking at RHEL and you say, hey, I want to jump in, but I'm a little bit scared of the command line. Well, with the web console, what you're calling Performance Copilot, you now have a way to use a UI with some of those common graphical user interface tasks that you would typically do when you're a Windows admin. So it's going to give you everything you need, from doing software updates, patching, maybe provisioning some LUNs from some iSCSI storage. We have an image builder functionality You can build customized images. So all of those kind of Windows type tasks, that's what you're getting with the Copilot or the web console. The other thing is that we also have a really intuitive and easy to use with the Grafana dashboard. So the Grafana dashboard is really giving you some great vectors, things like CPU utilization, storage utilization, memory utilization, and then your network and transmit receive, so that you can really go in and dive in and figure out what's happening on that machine at, basically a very granular level. So those are some of the tools that are really helping those people make that transition from the Windows world, or if you're a Linux guy and you've only ever done command line, it's now giving you some additional tools to help you operate your environment.
Okay. I think I wanted to pivot and ask a question. I think it's on everybody's minds all the time lately. It seems to be constantly in the news. Security is a massive focus for organizations across any type. There's been ransomware attacks, endless ransomware attacks in the media lately. What's Red Hat doing from a security perspective at the operating system layer? Linux has always been kind of had a reputation as a more secure operating system. What are you guys doing to continue that kind of perception and secure your operating system versus some of the others that are out there?
Yeah, so the first thing we do is we use the SE Linux, and really it's a way to control the way the applications are running in those user namespaces. And so part of that is as an example, we have crypto policies out of the block with SE Linux, and so the default policy, for instance, automatically disables things like SHA-1, TLS 1.1, et cetera. So when you're starting out that OS right from the get-go, you're going to have a secure operating system. But the other part of that is we use the OpenSCAP profiles, and those can be applied at the time of deployment, or you can use and create policies through our Red Hat Insights, and you can deploy those using out-of-the-box things like PCI, HIPAA, NIST, all of the kind of standard compliances that you require to run your business, depending on what type of business, HIPAA. So really, out of the box, we're applying policies, we're using system roles to really lock down and how those people do their job and operate with the applications on that particular operating system. So we're really helping assign the applications and those workloads in namespaces that are secured out of the box, and we're doing that in a way that is very easy and understandable with a policy-driven way.
Yeah, so it sounds like right out of the box, I can go deploy a Red Hat, virtual machine or on a physical workload or something like that. I'm going to be able to use the OpenSCAP policies, and I'm going to say, hey, I'm a hospital. I can, put in HIPAA policies. Or
That's
I'm
right.
a retail organization. I can use the PCI policy and immediately get some compliance that way. What about the Red Hat Insights vulnerability services?
Okay, so Red Hat Insight Vulnerability Services is really, in your RHEL 8, we give you the option to basically enable a client, and we highly recommend it, and it integrates with our cloud software as a service called Red Hat Insights. And Red Hat Insights is a matter of just basically at a command line with one command, insights-client-register, you can connect up and register that machine, and we'll have a predictive analytic way to look at that machine and then see the vulnerabilities, and then it'll be scanned, and then you can go in and you, in conjunction with, say, if you have Ansible automation platform, or say you have smart management satellite, you can go ahead and patch that machine and remediate those vulnerabilities all through a cloud platform. So there's nothing to install other than to configure the client and enable it. So it's a great way to really maintain your fleet of machines and do that in a secure way to look at the vulnerabilities for those machines. You can also do what we call tagging, so you can put those machines or label and put those into groups. And so that if you have, say, a group of applications that run, say, maybe SAP, that's another example where we go in and we basically have, using our insights, we've taken all of the hundreds of thousands of RHEL machines and we've built a warehouse over 10 years of experience. And basically, we're giving you those vulnerabilities and we're giving you those patches and helping you understand how to easily take care of those machines.
Okay. So that goes back to David's comments earlier about, some of the Red Hat Summit announcements. You had mentioned Red Hat Insights enhancements centered around not only Red Hat, but OpenShift and Ansible. I think, Peter, I'd like to go to you and talk a little bit more about automation and Ansible. I'm sure that there's people on here that already have Ansible deployed in their environments, but there's probably also people that have never even heard the word before. So let's talk about, what is Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform? What problems does it solve for a customer?
Thanks. Yep. Ansible Automation Platform is a way that you're able to tie all of your automation, all your processes together. And that is, Ansible Automation Platform can complement ServiceNow. It can complement your various deployments that are on-premise, in the cloud, whatever, your networking infrastructure, your load balancers, all these different endpoints. And this means that rather than having different silos of automation throughout your organization, everybody can standardize on an easy-to-understand and easy-to-learn platform. This will help them to pick up the automation, that will help them to use it, and that way it just won't sit there and go to waste then.
Makes a lot of sense. We did have a question from the audience. Ben Carter asked, will Red Hat Enterprise Linux licensing ever change to data center or host license? This is the main reason we switched to Oracle Linux. It was cheaper to license the data center versus the individual system. Dan, can you help us out with that?
Yeah, we actually have what's called virtual data center licensing. So if you have a hypervisor and you want to run that on top of, say, a VMware environment, you can run unlimited copies of RHEL. If you're from the Windows world, Windows data, it's the equivalent of Windows Data Center. We do not have a cloud offering at this point. That is something that they're looking at, but at this point, if you're running on-prem and you want to run unlimited copies, we have and it's very affordable, the virtual data center, RHEL for virtual data center.
Okay, so it'd be very similar to how I do other socket-based licensing today. I buy a socket subscription, and then I'm able to run unlimited Red Hat instances on top of that socket.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thanks. Pivoting back to Ansible, thank you so much for the question, by the way. Please remember the chat window's open. If you guys have any other questions, just let us know. Going back to Ansible Automation Platform. So I have some customers that are using it today. They've done some really cool stuff with automation in AWS. They're currently working on doing automation for things like F5 load balancers. I've seen people start to take a look at edge devices, things like switches that are in retail locations. But why are organizations deciding that now is the time to really start focusing on automation?
Sure. Automation happens when you see an issue and tomorrow, the next day, next week, you're going to see this over and over and over again. And so rather than manually writing your own scripts, having them live on your own system and trying to fix this time and time again, you spend a few minutes that first time and then you solve it and you can automate that resolution down the road. So you're taking a few minutes and you're making yourself an easier day tomorrow.
Okay. So the point being, I have to put in some extra effort up front, but long term, it's going to be better. And so I had one customer come to me and they said, well, something that we've decided to do is take a look and track all of our tickets. So if, let's say, hypothetically, you're a ServiceNow customer, you could take a look at maybe the 5 most common tickets we got over the last 6 months that we had to resolve, and then go through those and say, hey, are any of these really repeatable tasks, but we seem to just be doing all the time? Maybe I take a look at those 5 and maybe 3 of them are something that I could build out and automate. And now that just becomes a way for me to mature my automation process over time. I continue to look at that ServiceNow catalog or whatever ticketing system I might use, and I say, okay, well, now what is it 3 months later after we fixed those 3 problems? And then just continue to build those out.
Right, exactly. Be smart, be efficient, and make it easy on yourself. Yep.
What is Red Hat Automation Hub?
Sure. Automation Hub we have a number of certified supported collections that we and our partners have created. Ansible works with AWS, works with F5 load balancers, as you mentioned, Cisco, Windows, all these. So these customers and partners of ours, we have worked together, created certified content. And also there is galaxy.ansible.com, where there are 29,000 customer and community created content there. So Automation Hub is the official location where you can discover and download the supported Ansible content collections. This is all included as part of your Ansible Automation Platform subscription. So these content collections contain ways to consume your automation, how-to guides on how to implement them in your infrastructure, things like that. That is your Automation Hub.
Okay, so I've been through these automation projects before. These are not recent, but projects that were several years ago, where you'd go and you bring some automation platform system in, but then you were spending loads and loads of money on professional services because everything kind of had to be built from scratch, from the ground up. And I always kind of thought to myself, it would make a lot more sense. I mean, if you were just on an engagement doing this for some other customer, why didn't you save all the code and reuse all that code so that we could deploy it again at the next customer, instead of having to do everything from the ground up? So it sounds to me like what Automation Hub is doing is trying to build kind of that catalog of automation services and then provide those out to the Red Hat customer so that they can get a better time to value with the subscription that they buy.
Right, exactly. Giving back to the community. That's the Red Hat way.
Yeah, the open source dream, right?
Yep.
So I've been through a few of these. We have a couple of customers actually that are on today who've engaged with Red Hat Professional Services to help clients kind of go down this automation path. In your experience with Red Hat Consulting, how do you see these projects going? How does the Red Hat team engage? How do you ensure that when the project is done, that the customer is left understanding how to use Ansible, and they have, they don't feel like, oh, I'm going to have to go back to Red Hat every time I need to do something. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep. Yeah, before I became a solutions architect, I was in Red Hat Consulting for 4 years, so I can speak truthfully to this. My first customer, I was there for all but 2 weeks of those 4 years, and a good portion of that time with them was simply doing knowledge transfer, explaining to them, how do I use Red Hat Satellite? That was the main product that I supported at the time. So I wrote documents for them, I did K-bases, wrote Bugzillas for them, just giving them knowledge on how do I use the product, making it better for them. And then my last 2 weeks in consulting were to go to a bank in Toronto, and I did some satellite work there as well. And as part of that, I left them a 70-page document on every little thing that I did. How do I use the product? How do I research it? How do I troubleshoot it? So basically, all this knowledge transfer is a very key part of what Red Hat Consulting does. Sure, we can just simply go in and knock out an engagement statement of work, but that knowledge transfer is key. That's what the customers really like, and they can go use that then.
Yeah, I think I understand, because from your perspective, how can you it's kind of that land and expand type mentality. So how do I go to a customer and say, hey, let's try and figure out this one problem that we can solve for you guys with automation? Well, they want to grow that into other areas of their business. And if they don't understand how to use the product, they're not going to continue to grow. And that's not what Red Hat wants to see. It's not what the customer wants to see. So I definitely think that that's a good path. And that's what I've seen from my experience in working with Red Hat Consulting as well. I did see, I think David had sent me some documentation a couple of weeks ago. There's a new version of Ansible Automation Platform being released this summer. Maybe it's already out. I'm not sure. Can you tell us more about what changes are coming with the Ansible Automation Platform 3?
Yep. Yeah, Ansible Automation Platform 2.0 will be coming this summer, I think July 2021. There'll be a number of technical updates, things such as Ansible Core 2.11, Patternfly will be the new user interface upgrade, Patternfly 4, Postgres 12, things like that. So those are the very technical details, but also there are going to be some overarching feature upgrades as well. So we're going to have things like OpenShift operator. We're going to have that native support there working there. We're going to have Ansible, where we can go have execution environments. So these are going to be streamlined development and maintenance for your automation, making it easier to manage that automation, management of your dependencies for Ansible, things like that. So you're going to bundle together all the required collections, corresponding RPMs, and things like that. So there are going to be a number of enhancements like that as part of the AAP 2.0 coming out in the summer.
And how does a customer make a transition if they're already, down the road with AAP? They've already got Tower installed. They've already got a lot of these components going. How easy is it going to be for them to move up to the newer version?
Fairly straightforward. The first step is to make a backup for Tower. The product documents tab, you then go run the setup.sh and upgrade to the latest version from there.
Nice. Sounds simple enough. I think the last thing I wanted to cover with you before we move over to OpenShift, and it's just because we've talked about it several times with Red Hat Enterprise Linux, just talking about how Ansible integrates with Insights. Can you just briefly go over that with me?
Certainly. Yeah, there are lots of integrations with Insights. You can go look at the docs for that. But just like every other product with which Ansible will integrate, Ansible will help you automate the automation within Insights. You'll be able to write your playbooks for this. You'll be able to manage Insights. You'll be able to verify that the templates are running, various things like that. So this is going to help you to manage how you're using Red Hat Insights.
Thanks. I appreciate your time, Peter. And if you guys have any questions related to Ansible, just shoot them in the chat and we'll pivot back. But I wanted to go over to Giri. Thank you so much for joining us today. OpenShift, I think it's a little bit further down the road for my territory, but we're starting to see more and more organizations exploring it, especially on development teams. But Kubernetes, what is it? How does OpenShift help manage Kubernetes? And why are developers starting to look at doing things in containers versus kind of the traditional, let me just build an application on a virtual machine?
Right. So thank you. So starting off, Kubernetes is a container management and orchestration platform. And Red Hat OpenShift, I'm going to describe it as a cloud-native development platform that supports the core. It's built on Kubernetes, and it supports core capabilities that are needed to deliver applications in a time-to-market fashion. Also build innovative customer experiences that open up new revenue channels. And it supports all of this by containerization based on Kubernetes, DevSecOps practices based on CI/CD, based on logging, security, and monitoring. And all of this is built on top of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So there's security from the bottom of the stack, as well as developer support through tool chains, through multiple language platform support, as well as build, test, deploy tools. For example, Dan mentioned source to image tools. And those are all things, capabilities that bring both the developer experience as well as simplifying and streamlining operations on a single platform.
Yeah, thanks for that. The first thing I think of, though, before I joined Pinnacle as a solutions architect, I was a systems administrator. My primary role was taking care of virtualization environments as well as doing Unix and Linux systems administration work. So I start to think about this and I go, oh man, well, am I going to have like my virtualization platform over here? And then I'm going to also have to have this entire environment over here that runs OpenShift. And now I have twice as much stuff to manage. Can I run my virtual machines on my OpenShift platform the same way that I run them today, but then also be able to leverage the OpenShift capabilities to run containers?
Absolutely. Right. The answer to that is absolutely yes. Right. And so what OpenShift provides as a platform is it provides OpenShift virtualization add-on for both Linux and Windows via virtual machines, via Kubernetes custom resources, and it enables the creation and managing of those virtual machines, and to be able to connect to those virtual machines through CLI tools and consoles, as well as importing and cloning existing virtual machines and being able to migrate these virtual machines. And so essentially, OpenShift provides a platform where you can run both containerized workloads as well as your virtual machine-based workloads side by side on a single platform.
Okay. And when you're working with customers, you're doing presentations, you're explaining to them how OpenShift works, what types of customers do you see are most likely to engage in this initiative? Because I'm dealing with customers all the time. They're buying a lot of off-the-shelf software. It's not containerized yet. It just runs on a virtual machine, be it Linux or Windows. What types of customers are coming to you and saying, hey, this is something we want to look at and explore?
Right. So let's kind of separate this out into a couple of different categories here. So there are categories of customers who are building or building their own application portfolio. There are other customers who have a mixture of in-house applications plus COTS applications. And so in general, you'll see a mixture of both these types of partners coming to us and having an interest in OpenShift. And what OpenShift provides is a way to both take legacy applications and provide a modernization path to run as containerized applications, or just do a lift and shift of those legacy applications. And in terms of COTS applications, if they are mission-critical COTS applications that can benefit from DevOps practices and automation, that are, for example, consuming a lot of expensive resources and that do require manual maintenance and updates, those are things that are ripe for containerization in some way and running on top of the OpenShift platform that provide a streamlined way of managing those COTS applications. So I think it's depends on, specifically with respect to COTS applications, whether it is a mission-critical application for those customers and whether they have these concerns, and OpenShift provides a way to solve those concerns.
So, kind of doing a little bit of research for today's discussion, I went out and I was trying to, find all the different competitors out there that are in the landscape, just because containers are still new to me. They're probably new to a lot of people on the call. So, so the ones I wrote down, Amazon AWS has their solution called EKS. Azure has theirs called AKS. Google has GKE. I think VMware's is called Tanzu. Why should I look at OpenShift versus just using one of these cloud native tools, or just building it on top of maybe some VMware that I already own?
Right, and thank you for that question, because that question seems to pop up quite a bit and asked of Red Hat for that differentiation and why OpenShift is a appropriate choice for them. And primarily, it is because OpenShift is not just a Kubernetes platform. As I said, it's a cloud-native platform that provides key capabilities that are only available as additional tools and services on these other XKS platforms, for example. And those integrations with those services need to be maintained by the customer. So I'll give you a few examples of that. CI/CD pipelines for building and deploying your applications, serverless capabilities, service mesh if you're in a microservice world and you want to be able to manage those microservices, the traffic to those services and so forth. Logging, security, and monitoring is something that is very commonly additional services that you need to be able to not just engage in on those other platforms, but also be able to maintain those integrations yourself. Container build tools, a container registry, over the air cluster upgrades that are typically provided by these XKS platforms only, for example, for the master nodes, but all the worker nodes in the cluster are not included in that. So these are just several examples of things that are included as part of the OpenShift platform that are typically not available as part of these XKS platforms.
So given that I'm still so new to the OpenShift messaging and how this works, if I wanted to truly have multi-cloud, I want some sort of on-premise environment. I'd like to be able to run containers in Azure, and I'd also like to run containers in AWS. Does OpenShift make it easier for me? Because if I choose, if I go and say, oh, well, I want to use AKS, well, that's really only built for Azure. So if I choose OpenShift, does that make it easier for me to be multi-cloud?
Sure. So I'm going to answer that in a way that provides a little bit more of a broader explanation and benefit as well for OpenShift. So OpenShift is a platform of choice because it provides the customer the freedom to deploy it on-prem or deploy it on Azure or deploy it on AWS or Google Cloud. Now, there are various offerings that we provide. For example, the self-managed service offerings for OpenShift are available on all those three clouds as well as on-prem. And we also have, as lately, managed service offerings that are offered on both Azure as well as AWS as well. And so if you look at all these different ways that we offer OpenShift, you can easily see that you can take a hybrid approach where you have an on-premise deployment of OpenShift. In addition to that, you have a deployment on AWS or Azure, and you can maintain that and maintain those clusters through a single pane of glass. And so that is what makes OpenShift very, very attractive in addition to all the other capabilities that I mentioned.
Okay, I appreciate that. I was going to go back to you, Peter, for a second and ask you a question about, I had a note in here to ask you about Red Hat Ansible hosted services. So my guess is I'm a customer. I want to do Ansible. I want to start adopting some of this the playbook technology and automating workloads in my environment, but I don't want to go through, managing all this Ansible engine and Ansible Tower and all that stuff myself. What is Red Hat's Ansible hosted service, and how do I leverage that, and what makes it different than like an on-premise deployment of Ansible?
Sure, good question. Yeah, that is going to be our cloud.redhat.com site, and that is fully managed by Red Hat. And here you can go to see the top workflows, top templates that you're running, as well as just a quick, simple overview for the status of those jobs to see which are failing, which are succeeding, things like that. For an on-premise deployment, that, of course, will be managed by your team. So here you'd have installed your Ansible Tower, maybe your Ansible engine command line. So just depending on what you're doing, where you want things managed, that would determine if you want cloud.redhat.com or something hosted on your own systems then.
Yeah, and please, if there's any questions that the audience has, just post them out in the chat, and we'd be happy to ask them. David, I'm starting to run out of my material here. I can loop back and we can go over some more topics that I'd written down for us, or we can wrap things up. Yeah. You're on mute.
Yeah, no, I'm. I mean, we can. We have 15 more minutes. We're happy to answer any questions you got. So if you want to let her rip, let her rip. So
okay, Dan, I was going to ask you. Red Hat Enterprise Linux Image Builder.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about what that is and why I would find it useful?
Yeah, so a lot of people want to, especially if you're deploying to the cloud or you have edge deployments, you want to build your own image. Just in the same way that with a VMware environment, you would build a template, you can build a customized image and you can natively output it from the Red Hat web console, what you're calling Cockpit, and easily deploy it straight from there, straight into the cloud. So you can use AWS, You can use Azure natively. We have a VMware format. We have a VHD format. We have TAR formats. We have QCOW2 formats. So really, we've tried to cover some of the most important use cases that are out there, and it's just going to grow from there. But it's an easy way to basically create your own templatized version of RHEL that can be very slim, as small as 20 megabytes for an edge deployment, up to whatever size you'd like.
I keep hearing you guys bring up that edge term over and over and over again. I don't know who might want to cover this, but how are you guys seeing the change at the edge? I mean, what do you typically see today at the edge, and what are you seeing it kind of morph into, and what's Red Hat think the edge looks like maybe 3 years from now, 5 years from now?
I'll let David jump on that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, we're working hard to make it seamless. One of the challenges with the edge is maintaining the configurations at the edge, and the other challenge too is the actual footprint. For example, we're working at shrinking the footprint of OpenShift, so you can provide OpenShift functionality at the edge. Also, too, we're shrinking the footprint of RHEL and making it where RHEL can be easily updated on the edge. So we're working hard to make sure that edge computing is going to be as seamless as possible, within the Red Hat environment. So.
And then, Gary, I had asked the other two guys about how Insights was integrating with their respective product lines. How is Insights being integrated with OpenShift? And I mean, David, it seems like Insights is kind of becoming the go-to product for any sort of monitoring across all of the Red Hat products. Is that kind of the case?
I'd say remediation, right? It's one of the cool things about Insights is it actually generates Ansible playbooks, and those playbooks remediate the problem. So it full end-to-end automation. So, Gary?
And William, I think in order to answer your question, yes, I think Insights for OpenShift is something that really helps identify some of these things that David talked about across an OpenShift cluster, for example. And you can then go on from there and use the other capabilities of Insight to have a remediation plan, for example, to tackle those things that are identified as part of the OpenShift cluster. So that is how Insights is being kind of expanded now out into having a expanded view across your OpenShift clusters in order to be able to then come back and say, okay, we have, get remediation plans that will eventually be able to fix those issues.
Okay.
And I think the big thing around Insights is the predictive analysis in terms of, consumption of resources across your OpenShift cluster and things like that are capabilities that were previously being used across both the RHEL as well as Ansible, but now they have been extended into OpenShift as well.
Peter, just an off-the-cuff question. What's one of the coolest use cases that you've seen for Ansible? Just like a project that you can talk about that a customer's done where you thought, man, that's an awesome use case for Ansible. I can't believe they're doing that.
Yeah. Going back to when I was in Red Hat Consulting, the customer had roughly 16 satellites, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 capsule servers, something like that. Huge environment, 60, 70,000 clients total. And they had a Puppet infrastructure that for one reason or the other would sometimes kind of go haywire and would continually pound on these Red Hat satellite systems. and eventually that would cause basically a denial of service for their regular clients. So what they did was they wrote an Ansible playbook where it could go check the logs, see who's repeatedly hitting the satellite server, and then go configure a firewall rule to go block out that IP. And of course, that's not the correct way to do it, but in an environment as large as they were, it would take so long to go say, okay, send off a ticket to the networking team, hey, there's an issue on the firewall, go block this IP. By that point, the issue would be over. So this is a very quick, very rapid response, very easy way to go get their satellite back to a fully functioning state.
Gary, I kind of have the same question for you. I mean, there's some amazing products out there that people have containerized. Like the first one that always comes to my mind is Netflix, I guess, is written on top of AWS. Every time you get on your Apple TV or your Google Chromecast and you choose a new show to watch, it's spinning up a container in the cloud to then stream that service to you. What's kind of the coolest project that you've seen that Red Hat's taken on? That you can talk about. What's the coolest use case for OpenShift that you've seen out there?
Sure, I can talk about actually a couple of ones that are very neat and very different industries, right? I mean, UPS comes to mind with logistics and transportation, where they decided to adopt OpenShift as their application deployment platform and basically port all of approximately about 150 applications in their portfolio over to OpenShift. And the primary reason for them to do that was agility and faster time to market and be able to provide faster response to customers, right? And one other example I would take is Delta Airlines that has also adopted OpenShift, and that's in a very different industry with airlines. And they have decided to adopt OpenShift to, again, deploy and migrate their application portfolio onto OpenShift and use OpenShift to streamline and scale their operations.
So it sounds to me like, I've been a part of these Ansible automation services engagements. Can Red Hat also come in, with a full development staff, take a look at the applications that a customer has in-house that they've developed themselves today, and then help educate them or help provide services to, rewrite the applications for OpenShift and be a part of that process in a similar way as they do with Ansible and writing playbooks?
Absolutely. And that's what happened at Delta. That's some of the service we provided for UPS. And we absolutely have multiple channels and ways to help customers. One of them is what you described, is for consulting services to come in and engage with the customers. The other way is we have labs, innovation labs, where we can bring in customers that can be immersed with Red Hat folks here and can work through a proof of concept of some of their core pain points and how to solve them through either application modernization or developing new net greenfield apps on OpenShift, for example.
Yeah, thanks for that. Dan, I'd ask you the same question, but I'm not sure, with the excitement centered around OpenShift and a lot of excitement around Ansible, what cool project have you done on Red Hat Enterprise Linux?
Well, most of my customers are partners. And so the partners that I have, they're working on a lot of healthcare applications. That's what they're seeing right now. That's a big push. And especially with the last year, with what was happening with COVID. So one of my particular partners has been using RHEL, and they've chosen that platform because of the OpenSCAP policies. And they've really looked at that as a foundation to really build a secure HIPAA compliant environment. That's what I've seen personally.
What about machine learning or some of these other hot topics? I hear a lot of people talking about, TensorFlow and AI and machine learning and things like that, but I'm not really seeing a whole lot of it out in the field. Have you guys been seeing any machine learning? I would imagine it'd be pretty big in the healthcare space.
Yeah, we actually have a data sciences platform that's a managed service offering. So that's been a big push that we've really seen, where people don't want to maintain the infrastructure, and they want to have basically the ability to write their Jupyter notebooks, et cetera, and have those easily available to them and scale that. And then maybe, David, you have a few examples also.
Yeah, one partner comes to mind. They work with research hospitals, cancer research and such, and they use OpenShift as the platform where they've, in one particular example, they took 10 disparate departments within this hospital, and they combined them all with a single tool set, all running on OpenShift. And of course, OpenShift provides security between all the different areas. I can segment that up by using projects, and so it provides security across the whole enterprise. And they did that. And this pretty slick work that they did to consolidate and help manage the cost within this learning hospital. So.
Well, I think we just have a couple of minutes left. I wanted to thank you guys so much for joining us today, letting me run through, my 8 pages of questions that I drew up. David, thank you so much. Giri, Peter, Dan, thank you so much to the audience and the marketing team that came out and really helped us, get all the gift boxes sent out. And I just really appreciate everybody's time. I hope you guys have a good rest of your week and a great weekend. And with that, I think we're going to wrap it up.